29 turnovers. No, seriously, 29. How's it possible? When did they happen? What can we learn? Plus all sorts of actual fun stuff on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Bum 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 pow.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers. Lots of geeky numbers today. I'll tell you why. I'm super excited about something. As well, let's see, geeky numbers. Making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen today. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. We're on YouTube. I think you can actually get us on Amazon Fire. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today's show is brought to you in part by Game Time. Game Time is sponsored. Download Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Fun show. Not a fun game to watch. Fun show. I have to reward you for actually staying with me for all this. Points gained. First look all year. I haven't just run the numbers. I haven't looked at it. So this will be fun for me. Points gained is our offensive metric exclusive to the show, in which we evaluate offensive players. We're 20 games in. We'll look at 20. We'll actually look at the last 10 as well to see who's the hottest, who's the coldest, what Jazz players are doing what. We'll do that. I want to look at the Thunder build. I don't know where we are in it anymore, but it'll give us, I think, an interesting perspective on the players that we have on our team right now. And I'll explain that as well. And then let's start with 29 turnovers. My goodness. By the way, free daily newsletter. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the QR code, signed up. Locked On Jazz today, you would get an empty in the noggin exclusive to you. You also get late game watch exclusives, all those things coming. Plus Katie Heindel's weekly article. Thursday, tomorrow, you get Mike Schreier, who's really fabulous. He's like if you're looking for the Zach Lowe replacement, he's the guy. Basketball poetry, Substack, but he writes once a week for Locked On. And also fantasy tips. So please sign up at lockedondaily.com and sign up for Locked On Dash. All right, we had 29 turnovers. I did go back and watch all of them. I was interested. I actually watched them all twice, so I've got to see them 3 times now. How lucky am I? I was interested in 2 different things. What are we doing when we turn it over? And 2, where in the offense are we turning it over? So, and I thought I discovered something. The first thing is it's pretty all-encompassing, right? John Collins had 5 turnovers last night. Walker had 1. Colin had 5. Keyonte had 4. Bryce Sensabaugh had 5 in 20 minutes. Mihailuk had 3. Johnny Juzang had 2. And Isaiah Collier had 4 in 14 minutes. There's one thing that's kind of crazy about this. And I'm not trying to pile on, but I'm just trying to put in perspective. I mean, 29 turnovers is pretty significant. Here's the one thing that's a little kind of crazy about this. If you look at last game, and this is, and I don't know what my point is here. Maybe this is ridiculous. Bryce Sensabaugh touched the ball 23 times. He turned it over 5 of the 23 times he touched it. Isaiah Collier touched it 38 times. He turned it over 4 of the 38 times he touched the ball. Isaiah Collier had 11 front court touches last night and 4 turnovers. Bryce Sensabaugh had 16 front court touches and 5 turnovers. Now, 2 of Bryce's where he stepped out of bounds. John Collins had 33 front court touches and had 5 turnovers. Keyonte had 29 front court touches and turned it over 4 times. I mean, it's an alarm. That to me is alarming. Okay, and I'm not going to pile on. Like, these guys are embarrassed. That was embarrassing for them to be part of those slam dunks and everything about it. Like, I'm not piling on. But that's incredible that we have guys that are turning it over against pressure on an NBA floor, that percentage of the amount of times they touch the ball in the front court. Okay, that's my point. Here's what's interesting to me. Of the turnovers, 13 of them are on passes. That's, I think, there's an important note here. 8 of them are on dribbles. 1 was an offensive foul. 2 were stepping out of bounds. 2 were travels. 2 were handoffs. And 1 was some squiggly line. I have no idea, so call it a turnover on me. The other note that I looked at is when. So 1 was on an inbound. 3 were on late clocks. 2 of them, Keyonte's late in the clock, and he's driving and trying to make something happen. The defense suffocates him. I'm pretty soft on that. 18 of them are in play execution. And then 6 of them are in early offense, which we've talked about this a lot. You're actually only in early offense about 25% of the time. So we're actually turning it over a pretty high rate of early offense. We get rushed. We're trying to bring up the floor. Someone's trying to make a play. Luke is pushing it and he gets stripped. We're trying to throw an alley-oop. We throw it over the top of everybody. So that would be the one area where I specifically think there is a higher than natural rate. Well, there's a higher than our highest rate. Like Will's right. Will says all the time, like it's a smorgasbord of turnovers. It's a buffet of turnovers. There's no common thread to what's happening with the turnovers. I would say when we get accelerated in the open floor trying to push, seems to be a slightly higher rate. The other one, though, that's really interesting to me, and this is where I'm not trying to pile on, I'm just trying to understand, is the 13 turnovers on passes. And almost all of them, they're the same thing. They're trying to execute the offense correctly. The play that is available to them is not all the way there, or they throw a poor pass, or they try to force it because it's supposedly the right thing to do. And they turn it over. If Will sit next to me, he'd be like, well, it's not the right thing to do if it's not open. And every play has multiple options with more things coming. 100%. But we're not recognizing whatever our release valve to that is. The second thing I would say is we don't have a lot of guys that have so much talent that when that's not available, they can go just beat someone. There's not as much, my vision, and you listen to Ron and I talk about it on Postcast, it sounds like, well, they're up pressuring you, they're in on you, and they like just take the ball away. Not really. They're up on you, they're pressuring you, they're making it hard to make the pass, they're hitting the cutter, we're not owning our space with the cut, and and then the passing lane's not that available, and we force it in there. There's a few. Isaiah Collier threw a super soft pass to Lowry Markkanen. They got a timeout. There's a few soft passes. John Collins was unusual with the ball last night. There's some passes that are like, I'm supposed to go here, maybe? I don't have a lot of confidence in this pass, so I'll just kind of toss it out there, where you've got to be zipping it. And there's, if 13 of the turnovers are on passes, then I think there's some of the 13 that I think are on the receiver, not just the passer. The passer gets credit for the turnover. But it means to me also that the receiver didn't own their space. Like Will said it pregame, you're going to have to own your space, be physical, demand your area, and we didn't do that at all. And so, Colin ISO dribbling off his foot, Keyonte ISO dribbling, John Collins, yes. There's also a level that we just literally have guys who try to go one-on-one on a defender, and the defender beat him. Like, that's a large part of it. John Collins does a lot of things well, but he's in the post and he's bumping him back, and guys kind of can figure out what he's doing. They're starting to double and take the ball, and he's going to turn over more. So, the takeaway is, one, that there's a smorgasbord of a buffet of turnovers, right? But 13 of them are passes, and 18 of them happen in play. And those are plays where the guy's trying to do the right thing, trying to execute the offense correctly, and either doesn't have a skill set to get out of the predicament he's in, or isn't being as attentive to the detail, or the receiver's not being as attentive to the detail. Like, it's a combo there. The 8 dribbling turnovers feel like a lot. Like, I think you've got to be able to dribble the basketball without putting it off your foot into the backcourt. And I think you've got to be able to dribble the ball, be able to read defenses well enough that you're not dribbling yourself into trouble. But on the other end, we talked about it yesterday on Late Game Watch. Shaedon Sharpe, right into the middle of the lane, lost the game for Portland. Young guys do that. All right. The Thunder build to me is really interesting. I have no idea where we are in the Thunder build if we're trying to emulate that. But the Thunder build is super interesting to me because of the lack of the amount of players that are still on the roster from the beginning of it. I'll explain next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by our good friends over at Intercap Lending. That's Steve Carter. We are so lucky to have Steve Carter and Intercap Lending. Steve is our own personal loan officer. Intercap Lending has done amazing work with us, but honestly, it's great, as fabulous, as outstanding as Blake Worthen is, the CEO of that company, and they really are. Steve Carter is our guy. This is what makes it special. Intercap is a mortgage company that's shaking things up by making home loans accessible, straightforward, and personal. And whether you're buying your first home, refinancing, or exploring options as a veteran, Intercap is here to guide you. It's not your average mortgage loaner because it's people first, and it's Steve Carter, baby! He is our own personal loan officer, and he makes you feel like you're real. Here's some of the comments. Paul Hyatt said, Steve was amazing. We moved out of state. He handled everything with ease. It couldn't have gone any better. Communication was a priority and helped ease our anxiety. We get from Carlos Alvarez, Steve Carter is the best, always on top. He gets back to you all after hours if needed. One of the best companies and persons I've ever dealt with in my years of any business. Thank you to Steve Carter for a great experience. That is who Steve Carter is. Email me at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com, and I will make sure to set you up with Steve Carter and give you your own personal loan officer and the experience that you deserve by being a locked on everydayer. That is what part of being a locked on everydayer is. That's what Steve Carter brings. That fires me up because he is the best. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the official ticketing app of Locked On. Download the Game Time app today and use the code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Game Time's great because now they've added Game Time Picks. And what Game Time Picks does is it lets you customize your spot. It gets to know who you are. It finds you the super deals. It takes out all the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching thousands of available seats to figure out which is the best one. Curation makes it easy to save on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. Plus, all-in pricing, toggle that feature on, and you're in good shape. Seat view, you get the panoramic view of all your seats. Lowest price guarantee, and Game Time ticket coverage. It's all at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code. Spell out LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. I want to tell you a funny story that you'll appreciate. So as you guys all know, I screw up the audio all the time because I'm an idiot. Has to do with whenever we travel, the defaults are all wrong. And I have to reset all the defaults. It would seem after doing the show for 10 years, I could default it correctly. So I screw it up all the time. I know. I'm sorry. There's a guy named Derek Garduno who is probably as highly respected a media relations, PR, communications guy in the NBA as there is. He works for the Jazz. I really admire him because he has a program. We have a broadcast system program you might have heard of that I really pride myself in for broadcasters, and we kind of built it a little bit kind of on the model of what Derek does. Is Derek has these interns that work for him, and they all get jobs around the league. Like every place we ever go is somebody who started with Derek, and it's really an incredible tribute to who he is. That's not the funny part of the story. The funny part of the story is he listens to Locked On Jazz, either because he wants to or because he has to. I still have never figured out the answer to that, of whether because he's communications director for the Jazz, he has to listen to it, and the poor guy is forced to, or because he likes it. I have just zero answer on that. So let's assume he has to. And then he is like my bad sound police. And he's super nice about it every time. But he comes over and tells me every time I've screwed up. And so, like, I'm on the plane and Derek's walking toward me, and it's either one of two things. It's either fudge. I've screwed up the audio again, or something far more serious, like he's really mad at me about something I did. I don't know. He actually has never done that to me. But I always think it's possible. Nope, it's always the audio screw up. So the only good thing is I really like Derek, and we get to talk all the time because I screw it up all the time, and they usually lead to a good conversation after me screwing up the audio. So my audio screw ups have led to a nice friendship with Derek. But no, I know it drives. My point of this is I know it drives all of you crazy, and I know I'm incompetent. And I'm just letting you know that there is an audio police out there, and his name is Derek, and you can all put in the chat room. Thanks, Derek. All right. I think this is interesting. But if I'm being totally honest, I don't entirely know where we are. We might be in year one, frankly, which is, it is what it is. But if you look back at the Thunder rebuild, they have the year where they're with the last year with Billy Donovan, where they're better than they wanted to be. They had pulled the plug. Paul George was gone. It was the 1920 season. And they signed Chris Paul, and they've traded Russell Westbrook, and they're not trying to be good. And all of a sudden they are. And they actually go 44-20. It's a little similar to kind of what we did our first year, where we made the trade. We got they had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He played 70 games, and they were like, "Oh gosh, we have something." It's kind of like what happened with Lowry with us, and they end up winning 44-20 in that shortened season. Like, oops, we didn't mean to do that. So then they strip it all the way down, which is maybe kind of where we are now. We just did that for 2 years. And then they have their 2021 season where they go 22-50. Then they go 24-58. Then they let Shai play finally, and they go back to being 40 wins. And then last year they win 57. Here's what I think is really interesting. From the first year they did it, the 1920 season where they actually end up making the playoffs and accidentally and all that, there are two players on their roster today that were on that team. Shai, their trade for Paul George, and Lou Dort. And Lou Dort, frankly, only played 36 games on that team. He was barely on that team. In their first tank season, which, whatever you want to call it, or first losing season, whatever you want to call it, which is probably where we are today, honestly. So we did it for 2 years. They did it for one. Kind of the accidental, not really, sort of, kind of, oops, we just won too much. So where we are today, if you look back on that roster, they have Shai, who they didn't let play that year. He played 31 games, I think, that year. They have Lou Dort, and they have Kendrick Williams. There's not another player that played for them that year in the 2021 season, so literally 4 years ago, that's still on the roster. So a little bit, look at our roster and assume that when we're good, that there may only be 3 players that are currently on our roster today that are on that roster. That's what this would tell you. And they're not maybe who you would think. Like, they're Kendrick Williams, Lou Dort, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So Shai is Lowry. And the other ones are guys who bring culture and defense and structure to who they are today. In the next season, they add Josh Giddey, and they add Vic Krejci, and they add Trey Mann, and they add Jeremiah Robinson Earl, and they add Oliver Sarr, and they add Lindy Waters III, and they add Aaron Wiggins, second-round draft pick, 53rd pick of the draft, is the only player from the 21-22 season that they added that is still on the roster. In the second year of their losing, on that roster, Lou Dort, Kendrick Williams, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Aaron Wiggins. 4 players. It's not until the 22-23 season that they start adding players that are still on the roster. Isaiah Joe they got because Philadelphia just incompetently cut him and added him to the roster. And then they drafted Jalen Williams, and they drafted And they drafted Osam Zhang, who we'll see if he ever turns out to be any good. And then the 23-24, and they had Chet Holmgren who got hurt. And then in the 23-24 season, they added Chet Holmgren last year onto the roster. And they added Case and Wallace, who they just drafted, and they started to continue to add pieces. But it wasn't really until the third year. The other thing that's really interesting about this is if we go back and look at the Thunder draft history. So 2020 draft for the Thunder is there where they win too much. And I don't think they actually had a set first round pick that year. So they ended up taking Pokusevski with the 17th pick, which is kind of our Keyonte's 16th, and he doesn't pan out, right? So Pokusevski's gone. They, in their first year, because they didn't have a pick and they won a little bit more than they wanted to. So in 2021, after their first non-winning season, when they went 22-50, they draft Josh Giddey. He's not with them anymore. He's not with us anymore. They also drafted Alshon Shinguda and gave him to Houston for free. Oops. They draft Trey Mann with the 18th pick. He's not with them anymore. Those, frankly, could be our Taylor Hendricks, Keyonte George, Bryce Sensabaugh, Isaiah, like some of the guys we are banking on right now. This who was their version of Trey Mann. Then they get the second pick, and it's Chet Holmgren. And then they hit with Jalen Williams with the 13th pick. And then they do a nice job of hitting as well with maybe, we'll see on Jalen Williams. By the way, in that previous draft, they also drafted Jeremiah Robinson Earl with the 32nd pick, which is our version of Kyle Filipowski this year. And I'm not saying those guys don't make it, but I'm saying it's totally possible you can do this and your picks don't hit. And they draft Aaron Wiggins with the 55th pick, and he's the one who hits. He's played more minutes than any other second-round pick other than Iota Sumo and Herbert Jones from that draft. It's a great job by them. But they also drafted three other guys in that second round who didn't pan out. So I think it's interesting, right? Then they drafted in the 23 draft, they added Case and Wallace, who seems to be fitting in nicely. Much easier job, though, to fit in around good players. And this year they drafted Topic, who's injured. But I guess my point is, if we're in year one, they did 1 year of oops, we won too much. We did 2 years of oops, we won too much, if you're really believing in going to the bottom. And we're in year one of this build. There's only, from their year one of their build, there's only 3 players left on the roster. Shea, Lou Dort, and Kendrick Williams. Kendrick Williams doesn't really play if they're healthy. He's just a wonderful player to have on your roster because he does everything right. And Lou Dort is that same culture player who's also turned out to be really good over time. And then in the next year, they only added one more in Aaron Wiggins. So what I'm saying is, like, right now we could have only 3 players on our roster that are going to be with us when we're really good. And by the end of next year, we could have only 4. And the other one that's interesting is none of them are draft picks. None of them are draft picks. Now, that next year they hit on Chet, changes everything, and they hit on Jalen, changes everything. But maybe that's what we're going to have to do. Maybe it's going to be this year's Minnesota pick that's our Jalen Williams, and this year's Jazz pick that is Chet Holmgren. And then the other pieces, who knows? It's crazy. All right, points gained is my own personal offensive metric that evaluates just offensive players and their efficiency. I do believe in it. I do love it. I do think it tells us a lot. I do think it's pretty good. I do think some people have tried to copy it over the years. And it's exclusive to us, and we are going to look at it together. And it's going to be the first time I've looked at it all year, so that's kind of cool. Next on Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Daily fantasy sports made fun and easy. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play $5. I didn't say win, I said instantly. That's right, Prize Picks. Download the app today, use Locked on NBA, and get $50 after you play your first $5 bet. Is Jason Tatum going to drop 30? Is somebody going to get 200 yards passing? You can play Prize Picks. It's the best play to get real money sports action. Join 10 million users and sign up today. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Every Tuesday, Prize Picks also select player projections up to 25% provided with your lineups. So, how many threes is Steph going to make? What's Giannis going to do? Is Dame going to stay hot? Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this basketball season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds. Turn your sports opinions into real money all season long and have more fun watching the games. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Today's show is also brought to you by Chime. This is neat. I like it when companies do things that like have a chance to, one, be really interesting and successful, two, see a gap in the marketplace, and three, can help people out. And that's what Chime is doing. Is it time for you to take advantage of your financial world? Chime helps you fee-free overdraft up to $200. Your next deposit then is applied to your balance. So how does it work? Chime, you're spending during the holidays. You want to take control of your finances. You use Chime's checking account, which features no monthly or maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or you get paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Like this time of year, this stuff matters. Chime.com/NBA. They have over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. No monthly fees or maintenance fees. Chime has spotted members $32 billion in transactions through SpotMe. Friends can actually give you a boost as well. Eligible members get complimentary boosts to temporarily increase a friend's SpotMe limit. And when you give a boost, they can boost you back to temporarily raise your limit. So nice community aspect. Set up direct deposit in your Chime account, and after a qualifying direct deposit of $200 plus, Chime will notify you to enroll in SpotMe. With an activated debit card, Chime will spot you up to $200 on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. Your next direct deposit is applied to your negative balance. Chime never charges overdraft fees for using SpotMe. Enjoy the holiday while keeping our financial goals on track. Open an account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. Chime.com/NBA. Feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by Bancorp Bank NA or Stride Bank NA. Members FDIC. SpotMe eligibility requires an overdraft limits apply. Direct deposit timing depends on submission of payment fee. Boosts are available. Chime members enroll in SpotMe and are subject to monthly limits. Fees apply at out-of-networks ATM and OTC withdrawal. It's our first look all season long at points gained. Can I do it? Can we do it on those of you on YouTube? I don't know if you'll be able to see it. It's up on the screen. It's not very big. You probably have to have it on a big screen TV. Let's look. I'm doing it with you for the first time. It is, and I'll make it a little bigger for you. The leader in the NBA in points gained. And the way points gained works is it takes your scoring opportunities on a given night and then so in case of Domantas Sabonis, who's leading the league, Domantas Sabonis gets 15 scoring opportunities a night. His points per scoring opportunity are enough that in those 15, he's 3.8 points better than what an average player in the NBA would be. And so Sabonis right now is the most efficient, is having the most positive impact offensively at any player in the NBA. And how he uses his possessions. He's a 3.8 positive. Jokic is second at 3.7. JT Thor is only playing 8 minutes a night, so we're not going to count him. Nikola Vucevic in Chicago is 3.3. That's pretty interesting. Kevin Durant, 3.1. Karl Anthony Towns, 2.8. 2.9. Here's the first thing that jumps out to me. We're only 20 games in the season. No one's having like an incredible year. Usually there's 1 or 2 players over 4 early in the year, and there's not. By the end of the year, there's usually only 3 players over 3, and right now there's only 4. So that's interesting to me. Jared Allen. This also tells me I'm doing this with you here at the first time. Big guys are more important than ever. As shooting has gone down and league efficiency has gone down with the rule change, having a big guy actually seems to be more important than ever. Giannis, 2.8. Daniel Gafford, 2.7. Norman Powell, 2.6 for the Clippers. Massive. Christian Brown, Denver, 2.5. Peyton Pritchard. Really interesting, those 2 guys. Robert Williams, Steph Curry still there. Josh Hart for the Knicks. Larry Nance in Atlanta, probably dunking a lot. Cameron Johnson. Zach LaVine, Chicago, with 2 guys in there. All right, who are the least efficient offensive players in the NBA so far this year? He nervously says, wondering if any Jazz players are going to show up. So DeJounte Murray has not played much. Taylor Hendricks was down there, hasn't played much. I'm going to have to look over here and see. I don't have it frozen. Okay. So Kyle Kuzma at minus 2.8 is the least efficient offensive player in all the NBA. Alex Sarr, rookie. Bam Adebayo. Wow, that's super surprising. I didn't realize that Bam Adebayo was having a terrible year. Paul George minus 2.4. Interesting. Jacoby Walker, rookie. Zion in the limited time he's playing. Emmanuel quickly minus 2.2 in Portland. And one of the things this, by the way, shows you is you have one of these bad offensive players. They literally take away the best offensive player in the league. Paul George, with the best offensive players in the league were plus threes, something. Only three of them. The best offensive players in the league are plus two. You have one of these guys on your roster. They're literally negating that. Kevin Porter in Clippers, Keyshawn Johnson, Jordan Clarkson minus 2.1. Trey Murphy in New Orleans. That's interesting because he's supposed to be their future. Brandon Przemski minus 2.0. Very surprising. Cam Whitmore minus 2.0. Dyson Daniels minus 2.0. Stephen Castle, rookie. I don't worry. Rookies are always yours. Tyrese Maxey. Now we suddenly have an insight on why Philadelphia is not winning games. Azur Thompson, Detroit. Keyonte George minus 1.9. Not great. Jalen Green, fourth year in the league and minus 1.9. That's got to be unnerving. Isaiah Collier minus 1.9. Russell Westbrook still killing teams. Jonathan Kuminga, wow, all the Warriors guys that they were so desperate they couldn't possibly trade are really struggling. Let's look at the Utah Jazz. Walker Kessler's a 2.1. John Collins 1.5. Lowry Markkanen 1.4. Colin Sexton 0.9. Bryce Sensabaugh 0.4. Kyle's even. Johnny Juzang minus 0.7. It's hard when you're just a shooter. You never go to line. Isaiah Collier minus 1.9. Keyonte minus 1.9. Cody Williams minus 2. Jordan Clarkson minus 2. And Taylor Hendricks minus 3. Last 10 games. Jimmy Butler hasn't played much. Nikola Jokic 4.9. This is kind of what I thought I would see. Here it is. Victor Wembanyama, last 10 games, 4.5. He is coming. I told you yesterday in late game watch. Cam Thomas has been injured for some of this. But not a lot of it. Giannis Antetokounmpo having an incredible year, carrying them right now. Domantas Sabonis, Bradley Beal, Cam Johnson, Nikola Vucevic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Walker Kessler, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony, Luka Doncic, only played, I think, 2 or 3 games in that. Malik Beasley, Lowry Markkanen 3.0, pretty impressive. Christian Brown, these are the hottest players in the NBA. Let's go to who are the coldest players in the NBA. Jordan Hawkins in New Orleans is really struggling. I saw that last night. I was surprised by that. Klay Thompson, he only played 20 minutes that night. Desmond Bane. Ooh, Cade Cunningham, surprising. LeBron James, for all the talk, it's true. Jordan's in there. Paul George, minus 2.8. Brandon Miller, second-year player in Charlotte, having a tough year. Jonathan Kuminga, minus 2.7. This one's interesting. I had not done this. I had not seen these yet. Keyshawn Johnson, rookie. Alex Sarr, rookie. Kevin Huerter in Sacramento. Dyson Daniels. Trey Mann. Bilal Coulibaly. Keegan Murray. That's, to me, the biggest story in Sacramento is what a disappointment Keegan Murray is. DeMar DeRozan, very inefficient recently. Has not played a lot of games in that stretch, though, worth noting. CJ McCollum back in New Orleans and still inefficient. He always has been. And Yusuf Nurkic, who's out of the lineup in Phoenix, minus 2.0. And quickly for your Jazz players over the last 10 games when our offense has picked up and we have been better. Let's see what if Keyonte is viable during that period because the 1.9 wasn't great. Walker's 3.3 and Lowry's 3.0. John Collins 1.8. Colin 1.5. Bryce 0.6. That's great. Keyonte minus 0.3. If Keyonte can do this, that's great. Second-year guard, minus 0.3. This is very good. This is very, very good if he can maintain that. Isaiah Collier minus 2. Johnny Juzang minus 2. Jordan Clarkson minus 3. All right, that is points gained for the first time this year. That is Locked on Jazz. Have a great one. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're following right now, I'm on DLock09 on Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky. Please follow me. If you have not signed up for the newsletter, please do it lockedondaily.com. We give it to you free. Plus, you get Katie Heindel and Mike Schreier, and you get Josh Lloyd's fantasy tips. And hit the thumbs up button, follow, or subscribe. Thank you very much for being with us. This is Locked on Jazz. We'll send you the first ever national 24/7 NBA channel, Locked on NBA, or check out Locked on NBA every night with game night after the games.